Beyond the Mic with Sean Dillon.
We're joined on the Starline by a man who's dedicated his life to all things that he loved when he was 6 years old. He's an author, research associate at the California Academy of Sciences. His latest book is The Six Pack. We welcome Brad Balukjian.
Hey, Sean, thanks for having me. It's kind of fun getting to never have your childhood end, right? Little Peter Pan action here.
Never grow up. Brad, let's go beyond the mic. You've been threatened to death by the late Iron Sheik in an attempt to write his biography. Why was it important to seek out these six contemporaries of the Sheik and tell a richer story?
Well, I like with these books that I wrote one about baseball players, and with wrestlers, I always want to have the subject matter transcend the narrow confines of whatever it is, right? So I wanted to write a book that wasn't just about the Iron Sheik or even just about pro wrestling, but about the humanity of this shared experience these guys had, and what is it like to basically be the world's most committed method actor? Because back in the 80s, Hulk Hogan and the Iron Sheik and these guys, they were kind of expected to live their character all the time. When Hulk Hogan went into the grocery store, people didn't see him and think, oh, that's, Terry Bollea. It was, oh, that's the Hulkster. And I think that playing that role all the time, it takes a toll on a person. And I wanted to get at these more universal themes like myth versus reality and identity in understanding them, well beyond wrestling.
How has examining the tales of former wrestlers changed the way that you see the entertainment?
Well, I think it humanizes them and it made me feel closer to them in a way. Certainly when I sit down and watch wrestling now, you watch whether the current stars, Roman Reigns or Cody Rhodes. And initially it's like, well, I don't have much in common with these guys. I'm 170 pounds and don't want to do that move. But when you look at the human side, you realize how much we all have in common with them. And so in this book, I talk about, their family dynamics. I talk about their childhoods. I go to the places they grew up to meet the people that knew them before they were these characters. And then it's also kind of the story of the afterlife of the character, because, you have a fairly short shelf life of fame. And so, well, what do you do with the rest of your time once the spotlight is over? And I think to varying degrees, these wrestlers, some of them were more comfortable going back to where they began, and some of them had a really hard time letting go of that almost comic book character that they had cultivated.
Brad, you've discovered 17 species of insects in Tahiti. How did completing that project make you feel in comparison to this pack series?
Well, I got to name, so what's cool about discovering new species, you get to name them. So I named one after Harrison Ford, who's my favorite actor. And believe me, I thought about naming one after the Iron Sheik or Hulk Hogan. But what I didn't realize when I was doing my PhD was that, and about something completely unrelated, insects in Tahiti, that process actually trained me really well to write these books, because science and journalism, they're very similar. You have some question, you have some hypothesis. You go out there, you collect data, you collect evidence, test the hypothesis. It's the same process you go through. And so, I don't think my faculty advisors expected me to take my degree and go chase former wrestlers, but I'm happy, again, doing the things I loved when I was a kid.
Brad Balukjian is the author of The Six Pack, and he joins us beyond the mic for the Rocky Nate. 8 random questions. Answer with the first thing that comes to your mind. Brad, there's no pressure. You've named a bug after Harrison Ford. What's the best movie from him that isn't Star Wars related?
The Mosquito Coast.
Nice. Best memory of Greenville, Rhode Island.
Skating on the pond back when it would freeze, when it wasn't too warm all the time.
In your last book, The Wax Pack, you attempted to track down all the players inside that one wax pack. I want to know, did you chew the bubble gum inside?
Oh, yeah, and I wrote about it. And so if you want a detailed description of that process, please take a look at the first chapter of the book.
Must have been... Yeah.
I hesitate to use the verb chew there.
Brad, what was the first baseball game you ever attended?
Fenway Park, grew up in Rhode Island. Dad took me, first memory anyway, Toronto Blue Jays versus the Red Sox, probably about 1985, 86.
Least favorite wrestler of all time?
Wow. Least favorite? Oh, man. Now you're putting me, now this is tough.
Yes, least.
Who did I not like? I never liked Andre the Giant that much. Maybe I liked Hulk Hogan too much.
Favorite word in French, and what does it mean?
Favorite word in French. I don't know if I can say that on the air. in Lubbock, maybe that's okay.
Would you return to Moray, Tahiti, if someone else paid for it?
Well, yeah, I most of the time someone else did pay for it. So, and I hate to break it to you, Sean, but writing these books doesn't exactly make you rich. So, if you can find a way to get someone to sponsor you, no, I would love to go back. I lived there for a year in a hut by the beach. Now you're making me want to just throw my computer out the window and get on a plane.
I'm shocked that you didn't get paid a lot. What was the last WrestleMania you attended?
WrestleMania 20. I was backstage with the Iron Sheik. He was being inducted into the Hall of Fame, and that was incredible because that was back before things went sideways with him trying to write a biography. And so I got to go backstage with him the whole weekend, and I met Vince McMahon and Hulk Hogan and Roddy Piper and all these icons from the 80s.
We're sneaking in a couple more with Brad Balukjian, author of the book The Six Pack Beyond the Mic. Brad, who needs to be in the WWE Hall of Fame next?
Well, I don't know if this is too deep a cut for your listeners, but I do not understand why a guy named Rick Martel, who went by Rick the Model Martel, is not in the Hall of Fame. He was a outstanding wrestler and by all accounts really well liked. So I don't really understand that one.
How has writing this book changed you?
Well, because I had this personal friendship with the Iron Sheik, it was a personal journey. He was my favorite wrestler as a kid. I got to know him. We became friends. I was working on a book with him. We had, he was not in any state to really collaborate on it. 17 years later, I go back on the road to find him again. And so I think some of that closure, it was almost like a closing of my youth. I mean, I'm 43. I met him when I was 20. Our time together, was quite significant. And so to go back and see him again, and then he passed away shortly after I finished writing the book. It felt like, kind of closing that part of my life.
It's time for One Big Question with Brad Balukjian, author of the book, The Six Pack Beyond the Mic. Brad, if you could rewatch one WWE match all over again, which would it be?
Well, I certainly do that quite a bit. I think Hulk Hogan versus The Rock at WrestleMania 18 in the Sky Dome in Toronto is my favorite wrestling match of all time, just because the fans completely hijacked that match. And Hulk Hogan's supposed to be the bad guy, and they just through sheer force of will turned him into a good guy again, right there on the spot in front of 68,000 people. So
Brad's first game was at Fenway Park, loves skating on a pond, and he wants you to read his book, The Six Pack. Brad Balukjian, thanks for taking the time to talk with us today.
Thanks for having me, Sean. I appreciate it.
And that, my friends, is a Beyond the Mic shortcut. If you're enjoying these conversations, please check out another Beyond the Mic episode to find more actors, artists, and people you need to know. We'd also appreciate a like and subscribe on the Good Pods app.